Hello, I'm gonna be going over my final submission for level design on my QUAKE 2 map. When the player first crawls out of the hole, they will be paired with a vista. So when analyzing the layers, on the first layer the player can see the enemies and the weapons it covers. On the objective layer the player can see the next room, and on the background layer the player can see the giant sphere in the sky with the red line. With the red lining contrasting with the blue fog, it shows to the player that this is a place of importance and the player will be visiting later. This room here is the first room is very open to allow the players to get used to the controls and be able to easily dodge any bullets and take cover. The first room contains a little bit of secrets, with the first secret being over here, with this, which is just bullets. The second secret being behind this lighthouse, which contains a bit of armor shards for the players. And the last micro secret being this button over here, which is not in the player's path, but by hitting them, it will open the room with containing 2 enemies, but some health pickups behind it, having a little bit of a risk versus reward situation. When going to the second room, you can see that the second room is much smaller compared to the first room. And the second room, it's the first upbeat of the level. When killing all the enemies, these more enemies will ambush the player, which will also teach the player about ambush, which will be used again in the level. And the second room also teaches the player about secret rooms. So by going over here, you can see there's some of the walls have some cracks in them, which is signified to showcase that they can afford to be broken by shooting at them. So if the player shoots all these walls, they can go over here and be rewarded by learning about this mechanic with a double damage. So this room also offers quite a bit of exploration, allowing the player, if they go over there, to pick up the shotgun as I did, and going to the side room over here, which allows the player to get more ammunition, grenades, and a health kit. This room also offers the first secret in which the player can reach by jumping over the vats, but here the player can already have a glimpse of the secret. So the first thing when the player gets the room that will call for their attention is the extremely lit up elevator with containing an armor added. When hitting the button, it will notify the player that they need to use emergency ladders, but by having the emergency ladder on the floor, the player can learn that they cannot reach and have to do something else to reach over there. So by exploring further, the player will go to the second floor, which contains more enemies, and allows for the player to reach for the first secret, which is signified to them by having the pickups on top of the vats. So parkouring through the pickups, through the vats, the player can reach here with get jacket armor, ammo, and we know that it's a secret by having this little Easter egg of a cat picture of one of the developer's cat. Hitting this button will flood the room, which the player, knowing that they can swim up and down when swimming, they can go over this room here. Ooh, an enemy was plugged here. They can swim, and then here they will be teleported to the next section. When coming out of the water, the player has 2 paths in which they can go. The main path, which is taking the ladder up, or the secret path, as it's not necessary for the player to go through them, and also it's blocked off by this brick destructible wall. So for this, I will take the secret path. The secret path contains much more of a familiar type of QUAKE level design. So going over here, the player can grab the chain gun, which will teach the player on how to use the chain gun, as this room contains mostly low health enemies, and the chain gun is very well known to be used to kill very easily large groups of low health enemies. And here's reward exploration, a bit of armor shards for the player to go over here. And one of the main things that calls for the player attention in this room is this large vat of green goo, which is also more hinted at by the green lining of the room. If the player chooses to jump into the vat, they will pick up a mega health, which is inside the vat, but they will take damage due to it being toxic towards the player. So it's more of a risk versus reward situation. Going into this room over here, the player can get a super shotgun and have a little hint on what's to come. So over there, through this opening, the player can see one of the future areas that the player will eventually go to and grab the super shotgun. There are two ways of leaving this room. The first being through this room, through this gap opening over here, which has a jacket armor hidden in the dark over here. This ladder will take to the next room, take the player to the next room, but this will throw the player in the middle of the room with all the enemies already shooting at them. But since the player has a super shotgun and had an armor jacket over here, they should be prepared for it. Or the player can take the main path, which is through this ladder, which is the path that I will take. Going over here, there's some jacket armor shards to get the player prepared, and this room here marks the half point of the level. Since before this room, the level has followed much more of a linear type of level, but now at the half point, the level becomes much more of a hub type of level, as this room here allows the player to take multiple paths. The first one, I'm going to the boss room, which is behind this door, going to the security room through this path over here, or going to the hangar through the door over there. By seeing this opening between the ceiling, this opening between the walls and the ceiling, it shows to the player that there is something important on the other side, and they can throw a grenade over there because they can hear the enemies on the other side. So players who pay attention to the game, oh, I missed a grenade. Players who pay attention to the game can get rewarded by looking at the opening over there. Now if we go to the other side, you can see the enemy is dead, and the other enemy is much more damaged. Going from this room now takes us to the hangar, which is a major downbeat, as there is only one enemy which is hiding behind the crate, with the shotgun there to lure the player to face the enemy. This room also contains here for exploration the grenade launcher, so the player can pick up the grenade launchers, and players who would have just walked away would have missed the grenade launcher. Again, this player can see through the next room through this window opening for the next one, so it can have a better idea of what's going to happen in the next room. Going to this room, the moment the player steps into this room, the lasers will turn on, killing that NPC to showcase with the lasers, to showcase that the lasers are completely will instantly kill the player. In this room, the player can try to go over here, but the door will be closed, and which will hint at the importance of these pillars. This room is a major downbeat, because of the puzzle, but the moment the player destroys one of the pillars, that door over there will open with an enemy, which will render the room more of an upbeat. So how does the player know that they have to shoot these pillars? They can know through three ways. One, through this door, which talks about the pillars directly. Two, by looking at the ground. As you can see, the pillars have these signifier cables on the ground that connects to the laser platform. And number three is, if you look carefully at the base of the pillars, you can see that the pillars contain this yellow stripe warning texture, which is the same ones at the pillars. When shooting the pillars will give a hit mark, showcasing to the player, signifying that they can afford to be broken. So breaking, explosion over there, and this enemy will spawn. There are four pillars in this room because the player can take cover from the enemy using the pillars. And if the enemy shoots at one of the pillars will be broken. So when killing this enemy, the players who like to explore, they can see this signifier, this lack of railing over here, breaking the pattern of the railing. So by jumping over here, the player can go from where the boss came from, which is also a very common way in which QUAKE the secret is by having the secrets in the enemy closets. By going over here, the player will see one of the secrets with a chain gun and a reference to The Legend of Zelda. Destroying all the pillars will turn off the lasers and allow the player to pick up the red keycard and go into the next room. When leaving the energy room, the player needs to leave through the vents, and the vents are tight and have this red coloring to showcase the player, to give this player a sense of anxiety and hint at the player a sense of danger, which is confirmed by, when going over here, a shotgunner enemy. When going through the hallway, the player can see that the floor will break when going through them, and then we're back at the hub room with new enemies that have spawned, but low health enemies, so it's not that much of a major upbeat. And if the players choose to go back into the vents and jump over the gap, they will go into another secret room, which contains a quad damage. Now the player is back into the main hub room. There's only two paths they can take. One path they can take, the security room, which because they still can't go into the boss room. So going to the security room, the hallway before it is very long, so that it simulates a sense of a larger danger, but not really, because it's a longer room. It allows for the player to take cover and hide away from the enemy as the enemy rushes the player, so simulating a sense of danger while not really posing any danger to the player. Going to the final room, through this opening, the player is able to see the final room, which is differently colored for most of the level by having a really warm tone, showcasing to the player that it is important by breaking the pattern of the rooms. And touching the button here will unlock the boss room door here, which takes us to a pre-boss room containing a lot of pickups, which is just a basic pre-boss room, just containing a lot of pickups and ammo so that the player is well prepared for the boss fight. When going to the boss fight, the player can see that they need the red key card by seeing the symbol on the wall over there. Now when touching the door with the red key card, the door will open and the player will be in the boss room. The boss room contains a few things. The ceiling is the ceiling is high to showcase the player this room is of a high importance, and whatever is in this room is extremely important, which is when going in the boss, which will spawn from an explosion. So this room also contains the moving pillars, which the player can use to climb on top of the pillars and easily dodge the boss's attack. But as you can see, the pillars, they touch this red thing on the top of this room, which if the player is caught in between, they will be crushed. So gonna kill the boss. And also the other thing is that the player can see through the opening where they were and over there, which is a common theme on this level, being able to see where the player was or the player was going through openings. Upon killing the boss, the player will see here the giant sphere that they've be able to see since the start. And looking down, the player has also a vista of the first section of the level, to showcase again to the player a sense of progress by being able to show the player where they were. So the player knows that this area is of danger and importance by not only the red lights, spinning red lights, but also this stripe colored on the floor, the warning stripes. Going into the moving platform, it will slowly take the player towards the sphere, which is on purpose the velocity, so that it adds to the grandiose scale of the sphere, which is much higher than the player. Going inside of the sphere, this can be shown that the lighting and the scale of the sphere and the change in texture is showcasing to the player that they're seeing something that's beyond the player's comprehension, and it's really important. And by touching the terminal over here, it will destroy the sphere and the level,